They say history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. Throughout the centuries, humanity has witnessed practices that return with new faces and new names. The slavery of yesterday and the illegal immigration of today share more similarities than many would like to admit. The Democratic Party, which represented the American left in the 19th century, was the great defender of slavery. Its most visible leader, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States. But why did they defend slavery so fervently? The answer lay in their economic, political, and cultural interests. The fortunes of the South depended on slave labor, and their power in Congress rested on maintaining slave states. The balance of power in the Senate depended on the number of slave and free states, and that is why Democrats fought for every new territory admitted to the Union to accept slavery, thus guaranteeing their political majority. This map shows how the United States was split in two during the Civil War. The southern states, in red, dominated by the Democratic Party, defended slavery and formed the Confederacy. The northern states, in blue, with a Republican majority, rejected it and remained in the Union. In between, the border states, in yellow, were slaveholding but did not secede, and their loyalty was key to the balance of forces. In addition, the Western territories became a political and military battlefield. Each side wanted to control them in order to gain power in Congress and secure the future of slavery or of freedom. In addition, religion and racial hierarchy were used as moral justification, while freeing slaves also meant competing with poor white workers, destabilizing the entire social order of the South. Protecting slavery was, in practice, protecting their national political power. The Republican Party, identified with the right, was born to stop the expansion of slavery. Lincoln summed it up with a warning. A nation could not survive being half free and half slave. Lincoln opposed slavery because he considered it immoral and contrary to the founding principles of the United States, equality and liberty. But his struggle was not only moral, it was also political and strategic. As president, his main goal was to keep the nation united. He feared that the expansion of slavery into new territories would further divide the country and put at risk the very existence of the United States. The industrial North, based on free and salaried labor, saw in the expansion of slavery a threat to its influence and development. By opposing slavery, Lincoln defended the economic interests of the North and bet on a modern nation, the very United States that, in time, would become the global power we know today. In this historical engraving of the Brookes ship, we can see the brutal reality of the slave trade. Hundreds of men, women, and children appear drawn as simple silhouettes, packed side by side in tight rows. This is how they traveled in the hold, crammed together like merchandise, with no space to move or breathe freely. There was no privacy, no hygiene, no rest. Each body was reduced to a number in the traffickers' accounts. The goal was not human well-being, but maximizing profit, filling every corner of the ship with human beings treated as objects. The voyage to America was hell. Between 15% and 20% died at sea. Almost 2 million people never reached land. Once they arrived on land, slaves were condemned to ignorance. The law forbade them from learning to read or write. They lived without freedom, without rights, and with no possibility of escaping the fate imposed upon them. Today, history repeats itself under another name. Thousands of migrants cross the Mediterranean in small boats or the Rio Grande in makeshift rafts, overcrowded, without safety, without hygiene or food, exposed to the same fate, death in the journey. Just as then, the goal of the traffickers is not human welfare, but economic profit. Centuries have not erased the tragedy. Vulnerable people are still treated as disposable commodities. The modern tragedy continues at sea and along the borders. In 2023, nearly 3,100 people died trying to cross the Mediterranean. Since 2014, that number has surpassed 24,500. On the US-Mexico border, at least 1,107 people drowned in the Rio Grande between 2017 and 2023. And since 1998, more than 8,000 have died attempting the crossing. Research by educational organizations reveals that, although minors legally have the right to learn, the education they receive in these centers is poor or non-existent. They are not even taught a trade or prepared for integration. Medical and psychological care is fragmented, and many face trauma without support. Worse still, in Europe, more than 51,000 unaccompanied migrant minors disappeared between 2021 and 2023. Many suspected of becoming victims of trafficking or exploitation after falling into the limbo of the system. The lack of training, care, and safe institutions leaves many without a future or real protection.
Just as before, left-wing leaders defend irregular immigration under the banner of social justice and solidarity. In Spain, the government of Pedro Sánchez opened ports such as Valencia and Algeciras to ships like the Aquarius or the Open Arms, generating what many call a pull factor. He has also promoted the regularization of hundreds of thousands of undocumented people, with a plan that could reach up to 900,000 immigrants, while the Canary Islands received a record number of arrivals by sea.
In the European Union, common migration policy has also prioritized reception under the banner of human rights. Although border control pacts have been attempted, in practice, mass arrivals have been defended as a demographic and economic necessity to sustain the welfare state. In the United States, President Joe Biden presented himself with a migration plan based on compassion and asylum reform, proposing easier paths for regularization and citizenship. These measures have been interpreted as an incentive for thousands of migrants risking their lives in the Rio Grande. The discourse is one of solidarity, but the reality is another. Behind these policies lies a system that guarantees cheap labor, dependent and without full rights, while using the banner of social justice as a moral shield and a strategy to maintain political power. Slavery was once defended as a necessary evil, and today, a similar argument is made with illegal immigration. History reminds us that every system built on exploitation and dehumanization ends in conflict, pain, and transformation. If yesterday the price was a civil war, today, what price will we be willing to pay?